Counting clear straw at 40 God Wave. Artist, Martín La Roche. Martin submitted an audio file instead of a video. Size, 263 megabytes. Duration, 16 minutes.
Hello. Today I want to introduce you to something that happens at the Cantercleirstraat number 40. Actually, it occurs slightly underground, under the Cantercleirstraat 40. So this story is about a cellar and an archive, the Beck archive. I will explain you roughly how I came to know it, and then also to describe it a little bit. What was my experience when I went there? So, my name is Martín La Roche. I'm a visual artist. I lived for a couple of years in Maastricht, and then I moved to Amsterdam in 2015. I was invited to be part of a show at an art center called The Apple, and that was a reason to move to Amsterdam. And when I was coming to the Apple for the preparations of the show, I asked them if I could have access to all their archive, all the information they had from previous shows, artworks, performances, happenings, things that were done in their institution. They gave me access to a collection of videos, printed matter, documents, catalogs, books, and I was just looking and going through them, looking for something. Many of the information was very cryptic. It was abstract. It was difficult to grasp. There were not so many things in which I was interested, except for few images and few names and few texts. But I have to say that I was looking for something else or for something more. And then, I just continued until I found this particular artist called Rod Summers. And a particular evening in the year 1977 or 78, if I'm not wrong. And he was described of being like part of the VEC archive, VEC archive, VEC archive. That stands for Visual Experimental Concrete. And he had he was part of an evening of performances at the Apple. And I remember strongly how this is the only thing from that research that I remembered after 5 years. And I remember it because I was very puzzled when I read that Rod Summers, after a whole process of gathering a mail art archive, so Rod Summers stayed at an art institution in Maastricht called Jan van Eyck, and for around 1 year he was gathering and collecting different mail artworks sent by different artists and persons from different places around the planet, and he was sending them mail artworks made by him in exchange, and that's how he gathered a small archive. And that evening in the Apple in Amsterdam, he decided to shred it apart, to destroy completely his archive. I was very amazed. I was trying to look for something in this archive, and then there is this artist in Maastricht, or coming from Maastricht, that just destroyed the whole archive. Wow. I think I won't forget ever that gesture of destruction. But at the same time, it wasn't just destruction, because there was transformation. All this paper was shredded apart, so it became something else. And I started to see also as a way of digestion that we have to work with this material. That was the first time that I read this name, Rod Summers. And coincidentally, after some months, I was invited to Jan van Eyck to do a workshop for making a mail stamp. They wanted us to do some sort of mail stamp for the Dutch Post. And Rod Summers was invited. He was giving this workshop. They wanted him to be the initiator of this stamp, since Rod had so much experience with mail artworks and art that was sent through post. And I remember that once we started to talk with him, all the participants of this workshop, he rapidly showed no interest in doing this stamp, in designing a stamp for the Dutch Post. But what he had interest of was to share with us the mail art practice. And he did it in a very concrete way. He started to give us many different addresses from mail art colleagues that he knew that would answer if we wrote them. And for me, that was a very generous and amazing gesture, to be open to this network of different artists and persons that since the 70s, 80s, through the 90s, in the 2000s, till now, for many decades, have been just been doing artworks and sending them through posts, and receiving them and exchanging them and answering them. And I started to realize that there was a whole process in becoming a mail artist that was very rich in terms of communication. After some months, I continue my contact with Rod. I start to write him and to send him some of my artworks through mail. And I remember one day he decided to invite me to know the Beck archive. And yeah, he gave me his address, that probably you must be standing in front of it, or nearby, or in the same city. And yeah, I came to the Kanterkleerstraat number 40. I remember when I lived in Maastricht, I used to know this street, because when I went to the train station, I passed with the bus through it. It was close to Malberg Singel and the roundabout. Yeah, I remember perfectly. I remember that day I didn't think something very special about the neighborhood or the house. It was very similar to other Maastricht homes. Once you have lived in the city, you get used to this kind of architecture. And I remember when I entered, it was the home of an artist. I start to see the objects, the different things, like very amazed. But as I would be amazed in any home of any person, that I start to identify and read the personality of the person who lives there through the objects. I remember that Rod was very gentle and a very nice host. He offered tea, some cookies, and he started to talk about his garden and all the things that he had grown that year. And quickly he had a lot of desire to go to see the archive. And I remember he brought me downstairs to his cellar, and we had to cross through a corridor that had many shelves of jars with marmalades, with jam, all made by him and Liz, his partner. And together that year they made all these marmalades, and he gave me one. Rod is always very generous in terms of his what he's growing, and it was very special because this was very a homey environment, going through the marmalade jars. But then when you crossed the shelf of the marmalades and you gave a shift to the left, there was another part of the cellar, and that called strongly my attention. There were many different bookshelves, all filled with boxes and folders, all organized with numbers and letters and years. It was a database. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect to have this archive that resembled like a museum or like a library in the cellar of the home of this artist. This English artist that moved to Maastricht at one point. He started to tell me about these stories from the caves and the war, the Cold War, the war that never came. But the thing is that this cellar was very particular. I couldn't even think of it before coming down. I remember that Rod started to show randomly different boxes and folders just to give an idea of what he had. I remember he took out cassettes with sounds from the 70s, from the 80s, many different books and publications with triangular shapes, rounded, the most interesting materialities. I remember he was taking out envelopes filled with some letters and images. There were some little boxes, like for example an egg box with the image of a frog, I remember there were these big packages that were sent by him to him by a US sender that was doing, he was an artist working with birds, and he sent these huge packages with things. I remembered he showed me some artworks from Anna Banana and some reference to the Banana Olympics in California. I remember there were like this very interesting collage. He showed me also like some reference to Robert Filiu, some post that he sent him. And so in this like opening the boxes, there were appearing the most marvelous treasures. And then I started to realize, also following Roth's explanations, that he had a criteria database in which he organized, and he knew exactly what people had sent him even a day of a very particular year, and he had all organized in such a way that he knew exactly who sent him what in which day. I remember that I was also amazed that day Roth collected the post, and he had around 24 different envelopes from persons and artists from all over the planet that were writing him, and he took the time to answer each one of them every day, and so on. And I thought, wow, like this is very precious, giving time for others and others giving time to you. So there were this exchange of connections in this mail art network that were very special. After some time of this first encounter with Roth Sellers, I have come back a couple of times, and I am always very amazed of the gentle and openness of this artist that lives in Maastricht in front of you, and that has dedicated his life just to weave these networks and to open them and to record them and to make them available for somebody else. So I wanted to share this short story, my poetry moment. I transformed it into maybe like a short story just to communicate to you that you should at least be acknowledged that you have this big treasure in Maastricht, under your streets, under your ground. There is this cellar with the Beck archive, with the most amazing sounds, words, images, colors, cassettes, CDs, text and books, publications and scenes, and all the most amazing miscellanea, organized through a whole life of work. And for me, that's very inspiring. Also, when it comes to decide what to do in your daily life. I want just to finish with a small anecdote. After meeting Rod Summers, but also meeting other artists, I started my own archive or museum, if you want, my own collection. I'm also a gatherer. I have always been gathering. And I invite different artists to contribute with an artwork small enough or immaterial that could fit inside a hat. I have a hat museum that I call the Musée Legitime. And I remember that I invited Rod Summer to contribute an artwork for it. And he invited me to his cellar. And I was expecting that he was going to give me like an envelope or some little part of his archive, some sort of document, valuable document. But he took me to the opposite corner, where he had these boxes that almost seems like trash, things that he was going to throw away, or these kind of things that you were cleaning and then you would like to bring to a Green Globe or a flea market. And he told me, Martin, we can choose from here. And he opened the lid of this box, and there were many different toys. There was a little kangaroo mother with its son that was a little bit fluffy. There were these fragments of bread and cheese from a plastic hamburger. There were these little metal plates, small also plastic cowboys. There were little domino pieces and card games. There were some cigarette boxes from Greece. They were the most random situations, and he told me, Martin, I want my piece to be a collection of some of these little elements. And I remember that for me that was a big experience to realize that something, anything could become something. And since then, I archive and collect this little box of Rod Summer in my museum that has these little toys that remind me every day of the act of collecting, but also the act of telling a story through collecting. So anything that we bring to our world and that we organize is also part of how we narrate who we are and what we are doing. A little bit as this sound recording that I want to transmit to you. So remember, the next time you walk through the Kanterkleerstraat, or you are in the neighborhood, or you think, what is happening in Maastricht? Remember there is the VEC archive underground, still going on, still being done, with its database still growing and being interconnected. That's my contribution to Mosa Experimentum 5. I hope you enjoy it.
Most